The moment a mother realizes her own child looks at her not with love, but with suspicion and pity, is a kind of death. For me, that moment came on a Tuesday in my own kitchen. My son, my Mark, stood there stiff as a stranger, while his wife, Amelia, whispered in his ear, her eyes flicking over to me with a look that was equal parts poison and triumph. She had told him I was losing my mind, that my concerns about their finances were the ramblings of a lonely, crazy old woman trying to drive a wedge between them. And the most terrifying part? He was believing her. I saw my future in that moment, a caricature of a bitter mother-in-law shuttled away into isolation, my relationship with my only son severed by 1,000 tiny, venomous lies. They left me no choice. What she didn't know was that a woman my age isn't just a collection of gray hairs and laugh lines. She's a library of life experience, and a lonely woman with a fast internet connection is a force of nature. I did what I had to do. I found her messages, the ones not meant for my son's eyes, and I took pictures of every last word. If you're ready for this journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this a like so you don't miss the updates. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It's always lovely to see where everyone is. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, because to understand how a woman like me ends up playing detective on her own daughter-in-law, you need to understand how much I loved my son. Mark was my world. His father, God rest his soul, passed away from a heart attack when Mark was just starting college. It was just the two of us against the world after that. We were close, the way a single mom and her only child can be. We had Sunday dinners, even after he moved into his own place. He'd call me on his way home from work. He valued my opinion. When he met Amelia, I was overjoyed for him. She was shiny. That's the best word for her. Perfect blonde hair, teeth so white they looked like a commercial, and a bubbly personality that could charm a snake. She worked in marketing, she told me, and was a master of branding. She branded herself as the perfect modern woman, ambitious but devoted, stylish but down to earth. She'd bring me orchids and ask about my garden club, her eyes wide with what I thought was genuine interest. I wanted to see the best in her because Mark was so obviously smitten. He looked at her like she hung the moon, and all any mother wants is to see her child happy. The first few years were fine. There were small things, of course, little digs that were so sweet on the surface, you'd feel like a monster for taking them the wrong way. "Oh, Carol, that casserole is so vintage. It reminds me of my grandmother," she'd say, smiling brightly. Or, "I should let you help you with your online banking. It can be so confusing with all the new technology." I was a bookkeeper for 35 years. I know my way around a spreadsheet better than she knows her way around an Instagram filter. But I'd just smile and say thank you. I was trying to be the cool mother-in-law, the one who doesn't interfere. I bit my tongue so many times, I'm surprised it didn't fall off. The wedding was extravagant, more than I knew Mark could afford. Amelia has some family money, he told me, waving away my concerns. And she's a wizard with a budget. I looked at the 6-tiered cake in the ice sculptures and kept my mouth shut. This was his happiness, not my business. After they were married, things began to shift in a way that was hard to pin down. My Sunday dinners became bi-weekly, then monthly. Mark's calls became shorter, often interrupted by Amelia whispering to him in the background. Plans would be made and then canceled at the last minute. "Oh, Carol, we're so sorry," Amelia would text me from Mark's phone. "Something just came up. Mark sends his love." But the message never quite sounded like my son. The real trouble started when Mark decided to leave his stable engineering job to go into business with Amelia. She had this grand idea for a lifestyle wellness brand. It was all vague words like synergy and monetizing authenticity. It sounded to me like she wanted to sell ridiculously expensive scented candles to people on the internet. But she sold the dream to Mark. He was going to handle the logistics and operations, while she would be the face of the brand.
To do this, they needed startup capital, and that's when they came to me. Mark sat on my floral sofa, the one he used to build forts on, and he couldn't look me in the eye. Amelia did all the talking. She talked about market penetration and investor confidence and 5-year plans. It was a masterful performance. Then came the ask. They wanted me to co-sign on a business loan, a substantial one. "It's just a formality, Carol," Amelia chirped, patting my hand. "The bank just needs to see assets. We'll never miss a payment." My late husband, David, was a cautious man. He worked at the same paper mill for 40 years and saved every penny he could. What he left me wasn't a fortune, but it was my security. It was my home, my nest egg, the thing that let me sleep at night knowing I wouldn't be a burden to anyone. And I could feel David's voice in my head as clear as a bell, telling me to be careful. I told them I needed to think about it. "Of course," Amelia said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We just don't want to miss this window of opportunity." He was about to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Don't go anywhere.
That night, my gut was in a knot. It wasn't just about the money. It was the way Amelia had steamrolled the conversation, the way Mark just sat there and let her. This wasn't my son, the thoughtful, careful boy I had raised. This was a man under a spell. I did what any bookkeeper would do. I ran the numbers. I looked up their wellness brand online. There was nothing there but a fancy landing page and a stock photo of a sunset. I looked into similar businesses. The market was saturated. Most of them failed within a year. When I called Mark to tell him my concerns, his voice was cool. "Mom, I think you're overreacting. You just don't understand this kind of business. It's not like the old days." "Mark, I understand a balance sheet," I said gently, "and I don't see one. I'm worried about you putting your savings into this." "It's our savings, Mom," he snapped. "Amelia's put money in too." That was the moment Amelia started her campaign in earnest. Suddenly, I wasn't just a concerned mother. I was a meddling old woman who didn't trust her son. Every time I tried to talk to Mark, he'd have a new line ready for me. "Amelia says you're just scared of change." Or, "Amelia thinks you don't approve of her, and that's why you're trying to sabotage our business." My son, who used to tell me everything, was now filtering our entire relationship through his wife. She was positioning herself as his protector and me as the threat. I refused to co-sign the loan. I tried to do it kindly. I offered Mark a small personal loan with a proper contract to help him get started. Money I was fully prepared to lose. A test of sorts. He refused it flatly. Or rather, Amelia had him refuse it. "We need to do this the right way, through the bank. Amelia says taking a handout will change our dynamic." After that, the chill turned into a deep freeze. He stopped calling. When I'd call him, he'd be busy. My invitations for dinner went unanswered. The one time I did see them at a family barbecue, Mark was cold and distant. That was the day I overheard Amelia talking to our cousin. I was coming back from the bathroom and they were in the hallway. I heard my name and I froze. "She's just a lot," Amelia was saying, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "She's so paranoid about money, and she gets these ideas in her head. She calls Mark constantly, checking up on him, telling him I'm spending all his money. It's like she's trying to turn him against me. I'm really worried she's losing touch with reality." My blood ran cold. It was the most diabolical thing I had ever heard. She wasn't just disagreeing with me, she was painting me as mentally unstable. She was laying the groundwork to have me completely discredited, to have my own son dismiss anything I said as the ravings of a lunatic. And that's what brought me to my Tuesday in the kitchen. I had baked a lemon meringue pie, Mark's favorite. I called and said I was dropping something off, hoping the taste of his childhood would get through to him. He opened the door and stood there, blocking my way. He wouldn't invite me in. And then Amelia appeared behind him, wrapping her arm around his waist, whispering in his ear. That's when I saw the pity in my son's eyes. It was worse than anger. It was the look you give a confused old relative you have to humor. "Mom, we're really busy. Amelia says you've been calling her friends, trying to dig up dirt on her?" I was stunned. I hadn't done anything of the sort. "What? Mark, that's not true. She's lying." "See?" Amelia whispered, just not enough for me to hear. She gets so confused. Mark's face hardened. "Just stop, Mom. Please. You need to stop this. You're pushing me away." He took the pie from my hands, said a curt thanks, and closed the door in my face. I stood on his doorstep, the smell of my own baking mocking me, and I realized this was war. She was trying to erase me. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. How could I prove what she was doing? It was my word against hers. She was young, shiny, and convincing. I was the old, worried mother. I knew how that story always ended. That night, I sat at my computer, feeling utterly defeated. And then I remembered something. About a year ago, Amelia had been locked out of her own Facebook account while visiting me. She had asked to use my laptop to reset her password. The browser had asked if I wanted to save the password, and without thinking, I had clicked yes. It was a long shot. People changed their passwords. But as my hand hovered over the mouse, I thought of the look on Mark's face, the dismissal, the pity. I clicked login, and I was in.
My heart pounded in my chest. I felt like a criminal, but also like a drowning woman gasping for air. Her profile was pristine. Pictures of her and Mark beaming, posts about their exciting new business venture, loving comments to all their friends. But it was the little envelope icon in the corner, the private messages, that I clicked on. My eyes scanned the list of names, and there it was. A name I recognized from a quick search I'd done when they first started dating. Damien. Her ex-boyfriend, the one she'd claimed was ancient history. Their chat history was miles long. I started to read, and the floor dropped out from under me. The text in that message thread was a script from a nightmare I couldn't have written in a million years. It started out cutesy, full of pet names and inside jokes. But as I scrolled back, through weeks, then months, the truth started to assemble itself, piece by ugly piece. This wasn't a nostalgic chat between old lovers. It was an active conspiracy. And my son was the mark. Amelia. He bought it, hook, line, and sinker. Told him his mother's meddling is stressing me out and it's bad for the brand's energy. Damien. My little Oscar winner. He's such a simple dude. You could sell him beachfront property in Nebraska. Amelia. Don't I know it? That's why he's perfect. No prenup and completely devoted. His mommy is the only hiccup, the old bat. The words old bat felt like a physical slap. My breath caught in my throat. I read on, my horror growing with every message. She complained about Mark's taste in movies, the way he chewed his food, his ridiculous loyalty to his friends. She described my son, my kind, loving, wonderful boy, as her golden retriever and her stepping stone. She and Damien were planning a future together, a future built on the money they were going to fleece from Mark. The wellness brand was the centerpiece of their plan. They discussed how to siphon the profits into an offshore account in Damien's name. The business loan they'd wanted me to co-sign wasn't for inventory. It was going to be their seed money to disappear. Then I found it. The part about me. Amelia. The mother is a real problem. Refused to co-sign. She's smarter than she looks. Damien. Gotta handle that. So what's the new play? Amelia. Already on it. Operation Gaslight is in full effect. I've been telling Mark for months how forgetful she's getting, how she misremembers conversations, how she's obsessed with me and our finances. Yesterday, I told him she's been calling my friends to dig up dirt. He got so angry at her, for me.
It's working perfectly. By the time we get the funding from another source, he'll be ready to believe she belongs in a home. No one will listen to a word the crazy old lady says. I felt sick. I had to get up and walk to the kitchen to splash cold water on my face. This wasn't just a gold digger. She was a sociopath. She was systematically dismantling my son's reality, isolating him, and destroying his most foundational relationship. All for money? She was trying to have me declare me mentally incompetent, so that when she finally took everything, I'd have no credibility to stop her. The grief I felt for my son was a physical pain, a crushing weight on my chest. He wasn't just being lied to. He was being psychologically abused, turned into a puppet. But underneath the grief, a cold, hard fury began to build. She called me an old bat? She thought I was a dotty, sentimental fool? She had severely underestimated her opponent. I know this part is hard to hear, but it's important. The truth was about to come out, and it was going to be glorious. I went back to the computer. There would be no weeping, no panicked phone calls. That's what she expected. A hysterical mother. I would give her a methodical, calculating bookkeeper instead. I picked up my cell phone, my hands surprisingly steady now. I opened the camera, and I began to take pictures. I photographed every single message. I scrolled up, snapping pictures of months of conversation. I made sure the date and timestamps were visible. I took a picture showing the messages were coming from Damien's verified account, and another showing it was Amelia's. I didn't just capture the words, I captured the proof. Screen after screen, click after click. Each photo was a nail I intended to hammer into her coffin. It took me over an hour. When I was done, I had hundreds of photos saved to my phone and backed up to my cloud account for good measure. I carefully scrolled to the top of the conversation, leaving it where it was. I cleared my browser history on the laptop so she wouldn't know I'd been there. Then I clicked log out. I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet of my living room. The darkness outside the window, a mirror of the evil I had just uncovered.
Now, what to do? The obvious answer was to call Mark, to drive over to his house and shove the phone in his face. Look what your wife is doing. But as I played that scenario out in my head, I knew it would fail. Amelia had already set the stage. A frantic mother showing up with wild accusations and screenshots that could have been faked. It fit perfectly into the narrative she had created. He'd see it as the desperate, crazy act of a woman obsessed. She would cry, deny everything, and call me a cruel, manipulative liar. And Mark, my poor, brainwashed Mark, would defend his wife. He would choose her. It would be the final nail, and I'd lose him forever. No, a direct assault wouldn't work. This couldn't be a messy, emotional confrontation. It had to be a quiet, clean, and utterly devastating takedown. This was a bookkeeping problem, in a way. I had discovered a catastrophic error in the ledger of my son's life. Now I had to find a way to correct it, to expose the fraud in a way that couldn't be denied or spun. I had her secrets, but secrets are only powerful if you reveal them at the right time and in the right way. She was planning to rob my son and discard him. My goal wasn't just to stop her, it was to make sure she walked away with nothing but the public shame she so richly deserved. My mind started to click and whir, the way it used to when I was hunting for a single missing cent in $1 million budget. I needed more than just the messages. I needed a trap so perfect that she would walk into it willingly, smiling her shiny false smile the whole time. The business loan. It all came back to the money. They still needed it. They hadn't gotten it yet. That was her weakness, and I realized with a chilling sense of calm what I had to do. I had to give her exactly what she wanted. I had to help her get the loan. The next morning, I made a phone call that would change everything. It wasn't to my son. It was to my late husband's younger brother, my brother-in-law, Frank. Frank was a retired banker, a senior loan officer for 30 years, to be exact. He knew everything there was to know about business finance, corporate structures, and, most importantly, fraud. "Frank," I said, my voice sweet as pie, "I have a bit of a family situation I was hoping to get your advice on. It's about Mark's new business. I'm thinking of investing." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Frank is a thoughtful man, not one for knee-jerk reactions. He and my David were cut from the same sensible cloth. I could almost hear his gears turning in his head, wondering why I'd had such a dramatic change of heart. "Well, Carol, that's surprising. Last I heard, you were dead set against it. What changed?" "I had a visit with Mark, and I realized I might be the one standing in the way of his happiness. Maybe it's time I put my faith in him. I just want to make sure I do it right. Protect the investment, but also help the kids." "I see," he said slowly. "Why don't you come by the house tomorrow, say 10 o'clock? We can have coffee and talk through it." The next morning, I sat in Frank's cozy den, a room filled with books on finance and history. After a few minutes of polite chatter, he set his coffee cup down and leaned forward. "All right, Carol, what's really going on? You look like you're planning a bank heist, not an investment." I just looked at him, my brother-in-law, the man who stood at my side at my husband's funeral and promised to always look out for me and Mark, and I opened my phone. I didn't say a word. I just handed it to him and let him read. I watched his face change from mild curiosity to disbelief, then to a dark, simmering rage that I recognized from years of seeing him and David get angry about some injustice on the news. He swiped through the pictures, his knuckles white as he gripped the phone. He read the old bat comment and let out a low whistle. When he was finished, he set the phone down on the table between us as if it were contaminated. "That vile, scheming little witch. She's trying to have my nephew declared incompetent to steal his inheritance." "She's trying to have me declared incompetent," I corrected gently, "so no one will believe me when she steals from him and runs off with her boyfriend." Frank stood up and paced in front of the fireplace. Okay, a frontal assault is a no-go. You're right. Mark is too far under her spell. It would just blow back on you. We have to be smarter than that. We have to give her the rope, let her think she's won, and then pull the trap door. And for the next 2 hours, we plotted. It was like watching a master craftsman at work. Frank sketched out a plan that was as brilliant as it was devious. "You're not going to co-sign a loan," he pointed a finger at me, "and you're not going to give them a personal loan. You're going to become their sole investor." "Frank, I can't just hand her my life savings."
"You're not handing her a dime," he said with a grim smile. "You're putting the money into a brand new business entity, a limited liability company. We'll call it, let's call it M&A Wellness LLC. And you, Carol, will not be a silent partner. You will be the majority shareholder. We will draw up the operating agreement so that any expenditure over, say, $500 requires dual signatures, hers and yours. Any transfer of funds, any new vendor contract, any payroll decision will have to be approved by you." I saw the beauty of it immediately. On the surface, I was the supportive mother, funding their dream. But in reality, I would have absolute control over the money. Amelia would have a bank account full of cash she couldn't actually touch without my permission. "She'll never agree to it," I said, my heart sinking a little. "Of course she will," Frank countered.
because her ego won't let her see the details. She has already decided you're a doddering fool. We'll load the agreement with boring financial jargon, but the key clauses will be ironclad. I'll recommend a shark of a lawyer, a guy who specializes in corporate structure. To her, it will just look like paperwork standing between her and the money, and you will be the key to it all. You have to sell it. And just when he thought he had me backed into a corner, he forgot who he was dealing with. Stick with me, because you'll want to see how this plays out. That was the hardest part. I went home that afternoon with Frank's plan on a yellow legal pad and a stone in my stomach. I had to call them. I had to eat a mountain of crow. I practiced in the mirror, softening my face, putting a quaver in my voice. Then I dialed Mark's number. As I expected, it went to voicemail. I left a message, a masterpiece of maternal regret. Mark, honey, it's Mom. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I was wrong. I've just been so lonely since your father, and I've been holding on too tight. What you and Amelia have is so special, and your business idea is so exciting. I was just scared, but I don't want to be the reason you don't follow your dreams. I want to help. I have an idea. Please, can we all have dinner this week? My treat. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mark. But I could hear Amelia whispering next to him. Mom, we got your message. Of course we can have dinner. We'd love to. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure, I said, my voice dripping with manufactured sincerity. I want to be your partner. We met at a nice Italian restaurant, the kind with white tablecloths. Amelia arrived dressed to kill, looking like a CEO about to close a major deal. She was all smiles and air kisses. Mark looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He thought he was getting his mom back. He had no idea I was there to save him from his wife. I played my part to perfection. I apologized profusely. I told Frank had called me a fool for not seeing what a great opportunity this was. After our last conversation, I felt so terrible, I called Uncle Frank just to talk it out. I told him about your business, and he was the one who opened my eyes. He said it was a brilliant concept for the modern market. Amelia preened. Well, Frank is a very smart man, she said, practically glowing. He is, I agreed, and he suggested the best way for me to help. He said co-signing a loan is messy and comes with all sorts of interest payments. He said the cleanest, most professional way to do this is for me to become your primary investor, for me to fund the company directly. I watched Amelia's eyes light up. This was even better than she had planned. No bank to answer to, just me, the dotty old mother-in-law she could easily manipulate. Mark looked stunned. Mom, that's way too generous. We can't ask you to do that. You didn't ask, honey. I'm offering, I said, reaching across the table to pat his hand. This isn't a handout. This is an investment. I'll form a proper LLC for us. We'll all be on the board, and you two will run the show. I'll just be a silent partner. My money, your brains. We'll all be rich. Amelia nearly vibrated with excitement. Carol, that is an absolutely fantastic idea. It's so much cleaner, and it shows you really believe in us. The hook was in. Now I just had to set it. Frank's lawyer is already drawing up the standard operating agreement. It's just boilerplate stuff, corporate structuring, liability protection. We can all meet at his office next week to sign the papers, and I'll have my bank transfer the seed money into the new corporate account that same day. We can start with, say, $250,000. Amelia choked on her wine. Her eyes were as wide as saucers. It was more money than she had even dreamed of getting from the loan. It was a fast track to her future with Damien. She thought she was signing her ticket to freedom, her passport to a new life. In her mind, she was already on a beach somewhere, laughing with her lover about how easy it had all been. She was so blinded by her own greed and her cartoon of me that she didn't see the bars of the cage descending all around her.
She signed her name with a flourish. She was actually signing her confession. The week leading up to the signing was a masterclass in playing a part. Amelia was my new best friend. She called me every day. "Just checking in, Carol," she'd chirp. "Mark and I were just talking about how incredibly grateful we are." She sent me links to luxury handbags for when our first dividend check comes in. She was gloating, secure in her victory. I played along, discussing color palettes and praising her impeccable taste. Every syrupy word from her was gasoline on the fire of my resolve. Mark, for his part, was back to being my son again. He was warm and attentive, and so full of gratitude it broke my heart. He had no idea the loving mother he was so happy to have back was secretly sharpening a knife to cut a cancer out of his life. The guilt was immense, but the alternative, letting her destroy him, was unthinkable. The day of the signing was pure theater. We met at the office of Frank's lawyer, Mr. Albright, a man who looked like he'd been chiseled out of granite and dressed in a pinstripe suit. He exuded an aura of expensive, unimpeachable authority. Frank was there too, in his role as my trusted financial advisor. Mr. Albright sat us all down in a conference room that smelled of leather and old money. "All right," he began, pushing a thick document across the polished mahogany table. "This is the operating agreement for M&A Wellness, LLC. It's a fairly standard document outlining the company's structure, member duties, and financial controls." Amelia picked it up, her manicured nails tapping on the cover. She flipped a few pages, her eyes glazing over at the dense paragraphs of legalese about capital contributions and distribution schedules. "It's a bit of a read," Mr. Albright said smoothly, "but I can walk you through the highlights. The company will be funded with an initial investment of $250,000 from Carol. Amelia will serve as Chief Executive Officer and Mark as Chief Operating Officer." Amelia beamed, sitting up straighter at the title. "Now," the lawyer continued, turning a page, "Article 4, Section 3, Financial Disbursements. This is the important part for keeping our books clean. It stipulates that any and all expenditures, transfers, or payments of any kind from the corporate accounts require dual authorization. For the purpose of this agreement, that means the signature of the CEO, Amelia, and the majority shareholder, Carol." He looked up, peering over his glasses at me. "Just a standard check and balance, keeps everyone protected." I held my breath. I watched Amelia's face. She barely registered it. To her, it was just jargon. Of course the investor would have to sign things. In her mind, I was a senile woman who would just sign whatever she put in front of me with a smile and a pat on the hand. It was a rubber stamp, not a roadblock. "Make sense?" she said with a dismissive little wave. "Good to be professional." Mark, ever my cautious boy, picked up the document. "So Mom would have to sign off on, every check?" "Every single one," Frank chimed in cheerfully from his corner. "It's how you protect the investor's assets and shield yourselves from liability. It's airtight, prevents any misunderstandings down the line." He said the word misunderstandings while looking directly at Amelia with the friendliest smile imaginable. It was a chilling performance. Amelia just wanted to get to the end, to the part where the money appeared in an account with her name on it. She nudged Mark. "Honey, it's just standard procedure. Let's not hold things up." She took out a fancy fountain pen from her purse and signed her name with a dramatic flourish on the signature line. Mark, reassured, signed his. Then Mr. Albright slid the document over to me. I took a deep, steadying breath and signed my name, Carol Sorensen, the old bat, the majority shareholder, the executioner. He was about to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Don't go anywhere.
The moment the ink was dry, the mood changed. Amelia was practically giddy. She hugged me tightly. "To a prosperous future, Carol," she whispered in my ear. I hugged her back, my mind a block of ice. I thought, "You have no idea what future you just signed up for." The bank account was opened the next day. I transferred the money as promised, $250,000. Seeing that number in the company's bank statement must have been like pure oxygen to Amelia. The trap was now set and baited. All I had to do was wait for the rat to get hungry. It didn't take long. Within a week, the first expense report landed in my email inbox, needing my digital signature. It was for things that seemed reasonable on the surface: website design, logo creation, social media marketing packages. The vendors she'd chosen were ridiculously overpriced, but I knew I had to let her have some small victories. I signed off on them. Let her build her beautiful, fake company. Let her spin her web. Another week went by. Then came the one I was waiting for. A request for a consultant's fee. A check made out to one Mr. Damian Price for $10,000. The description read, "For strategic brand outreach and initial market analysis."
My heart hammered in my chest. She was so arrogant, she didn't even bother to hide it. She thought I was too stupid, too senile, too out of touch to ever put two and two together. She was laundering my money directly to her boyfriend. I took a screenshot of the request. Then I picked up the phone. It was time for phase 2. I called the one person who I knew would handle this with the quiet professionalism it required, my old boss, a certified fraud examiner named George. I had been his bookkeeper for 20 years. George owes me more than a few favors, and he despises cheats more than anything in the world. "George," I said, "I have a strange situation I think you'll find very interesting. It involves a startup, a significant investment, and what I believe is a conspiracy to commit fraud." George listened patiently as I laid out the whole story, from the whispers in the kitchen to the consultant's fee for Mr. Damian Price. I didn't have to explain much. He saw it immediately. "She's an amateur, Carol," he said, and I could hear the excitement in his voice, the thrill of the hunt. "This is sloppy. She left a paper trail a mile wide. The messages are the motive, and this fraudulent invoice is the act. We've got her. What's the end game you're looking for?" "The end game," I said slowly, "is a public revelation. I want my son to see who she is in a way he cannot deny, and I want her to walk away with nothing but the clothes on her back." "That can be arranged," George said. He told me exactly what to do. Deny the payment. Don't give a reason. Just click reject. Let's see what she does. Let's watch her get desperate. So I did. I opened the request for $10,000 and clicked the big red reject button. I gave no explanation. I just rejected it. Then I went out to my garden and started weeding my roses. I waited. The explosion came 2 hours later. It was an email from Amelia, dripping with false politeness. "Hi, Carol. I think there may have been a mistake. You seem to have accidentally rejected the payment for our primary consultant. Could you please take another look? We're on a very tight deadline with him. Best, Amelia." I typed back a single sentence. There was no mistake. Her reply was instant. "What do you mean? This is a crucial business expense." I wrote back, "I do not see sufficient evidence that this is a valid or necessary business expense. Approval is denied." My phone immediately started ringing. It was Mark. I let it go to voicemail. He'd be getting the panicked, tearful version from her. He was still her puppet. I was not ready to talk to the puppet. I needed to talk to the puppet master. And for that, I needed to wait until she showed her hand completely. All I had to do now was sit back and watch her squirm on the hook I'd so carefully placed. The grand finale was coming, and I was holding all the tickets. The storm broke that evening. I saw Mark's car pull into my driveway, and he got out with a rigid posture that told me everything I needed to know. Amelia wasn't with him. She had sent him in alone, her perfect little soldier,
armed with her talking points and righteous indignation. He stormed into my kitchen without even knocking, his face a thundercloud of confusion and anger. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" he demanded. "Amelia is in tears. You're refusing to approve a crucial payment. You're stonewalling her emails. She said you're trying to sabotage the company after everything you promised. Is this some kind of game to you?" I had rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times. I did not get defensive. I did not cry. I looked my son in the eye, my heart breaking for the pain he was about to feel, and spoke in the calmest, most leveled voice I could manage. "Mark, this is not a game, and this is no longer a family discussion. This is a business matter, a serious one. I have scheduled a mandatory board meeting for M&A Wellness LLC tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock at Mr. Albright's office." He was taken aback by my formality. "A board meeting? Mom, the board is just you, me, and Amelia." "Exactly. Attendance is required. Please be there on time. And Mark," I added, my voice softening just a fraction, "please, for your own sake tomorrow, just listen. Don't speak. Just listen." He stared at me, his anger giving way to a flicker of doubt, and then left as abruptly as he had arrived.
The next morning, the conference room felt like a courtroom. I was there first with Frank. Then George, my fraud examiner friend, arrived, a distinguished-looking man carrying a thin leather briefcase. He was introduced simply as a third-party financial consultant. Mr. Albright sat at the head of the table, his face impassive. Mark and Amelia were the last to arrive. Mark looked tense and worried. Amelia, however, looked ready for battle. She was wearing a blood-red power suit, and she gave me a look of pure contempt as she sat down. She thought she was there to witness me being put in my place by the lawyers. Mr. Albright cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. We are here to discuss a flagged financial transaction and a few other matters concerning the integrity of the company. Specifically, a pending $10,000 payment to a Mr. Damian Price." Amelia jumped in immediately. "It's a standard consulting fee. My mother-in-law, for reasons of her own, has decided to block it and freeze our progress." "I see," Mr. Albright said, opening a folder. He pushed a document across the table. It was the invoice. "And this Damian Price, what is his expertise?" "He's a leading branding strategist in the wellness space. His insights are crucial to our launch." George spoke for the first time, his voice calm and professional. "That's interesting, because my preliminary investigation could not find any evidence of a consulting business registered to Damian Price. In fact, his digital footprint consists almost entirely of a personal social media presence where he lists his profession as bartender." Amelia's face paled slightly. Mark's eyes darted from the invoice to Amelia. "He's an independent contractor. He doesn't have a big online presence." "Indeed," Mr. Albright said, opening a second, much thicker binder. "This brings us to a larger issue. As the majority shareholder, Mrs. Sorensen expressed concerns that warranted a fiduciary review. Mr. Williams," he nodded to George, "was brought in to perform a digital audit to ensure there was no evidence of conspiracy to defraud the company." "Conspiracy to defraud?" Amelia shrieked, half rising from her chair. "This is insane. She's a vindictive, crazy old woman who has been trying to sabotage my marriage from day one. She is fabricating this entire thing." Mark looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Mom, what is this?" I didn't answer him. I just looked at Mr. Albright, who turned the first page of the binder. On it, in large to fill the entire page, was a screenshot of a message. "Damian, my little Oscar winner, he's such a simple dude. You could sell him beachfront property in Nebraska. Amelia, don't I know it? That's why he's perfect. The mommy is the only hiccup, the old bat." A strangled gasp escaped Mark's throat. He stared at the page, then at Amelia.
Her face was a mask of chalky horror. "What is this? Where did you get that?" she stammered. "Page 2, Mr. Albright said grimly. He flipped it. "Amelia, Operation Gaslight is in full effect. By the time we get the funding, he'll be ready to believe she belongs in a home." Page after page, Mr. Albright revealed the highlights of their plot, their plan to drain the LLC, their insults about Mark, their future together. It was all there, printed in cold black and white ink. Mark sank lower and lower in his chair, his face ashen, his hands covering his mouth. He looked at Amelia, and for the first time, I think he truly saw her. The shiny, perfect woman was gone. In her place was a cheap, cruel stranger. "She faked them. She photoshopped them. Mark, baby, you can't believe this," Amelia cried, her voice cracking with desperation. "She hates me. She's been trying to get rid of me." Mrs. Sorensen was concerned you would make that claim, which is why she had me independently verify the authenticity of the communications. I can certify to a legal certainty that these are unaltered screenshots taken from your verified social media account originating from your IP address. The metadata is all there. It's an open and shut case of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and embezzlement. That was the final blow. Amelia deflated. All the fight went out of her, replaced with a raw, ugly panic. She looked around the room at the circle of stony faces, and she knew she was trapped. Mr. Albright closed the binder. "Here is what is going to happen," he said, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. "Amelia, you are going to sign these documents. One is your immediate resignation as CEO. The other is a bill of sale, relinquishing your 1% minority share in the company back to the majority holder for the sum of $1. The third is a legally binding non-disclosure agreement. You will walk out of this room with your personal effects, and you will never contact Mark or his mother ever again. If you refuse, or if you violate the NDA at any time, we will turn this entire file over to the district attorney's office. Are we clear?" Tears of pure rage and defeat streamed down Amelia's face. She looked at Mark one last time, hoping for an ally, but my son wouldn't even look at her. He just stared at the table, at the wreckage of his life. With a trembling hand, Amelia picked up the pen and signed away her future. She pushed the papers back across the table, stood up, and walked out of the room without another word. The door clicked shut behind her, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Silence descended. Frank put a comforting hand on my shoulder. Mark didn't move for a full minute. Then he finally lifted his head and looked at me. His eyes were full of a pain so deep it was almost black, and full of shame.
"Mom," he whispered, his voice hoarse, "I'm so sorry. I am so sorry." The ride home was quiet. We sat in my living room, the same room where she had plotted against me. Mark finally broke down, the kind of soul-deep sobs a man only allows himself a few times in his life. I just held him, rocking him like I did when he was a little boy with a scraped knee. I let him cry it all out. The betrayal, the humiliation, the heartbreak. "How could I have been so stupid?" he finally asked, his voice raw. "You weren't stupid, honey," I told him, stroking his hair. "You were in love. You saw what you wanted to see. She was just a very good liar." It took time. A long time. The next few months were a blur of legal paperwork to dissolve the LLC and recover all the funds, and long, quiet talks with Mark. We rebuilt our relationship slowly, brick by painful brick. He had to learn to trust his own judgment again, and I had to learn to forgive him for doubting mine. But we did it.
Because underneath it all, we were still mother and son. We were still family. The other day, Mark came over for Sunday dinner, just like old times. He helps me in the garden now. We talk on the phone almost every day. He's more thoughtful now, quieter, but stronger too. He looks at me with love, but also with a new kind of respect. He doesn't see a dotty old woman. He sees the person who went to war for him while he was sleeping in the enemy's camp. Amelia called me an old bat. What she didn't realize is that this old bat has wings of steel, and she knows exactly how to protect her young. I was wronged, but I am not a victim. I am a survivor, and I am the one who gets to tell the story. So, now you've heard it all. I'd love to know what you think. And I have to ask you, what would you have done if you were in my place?
So, another story of my grandmother has end. And be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.